What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards Football Sports Talk Radio. I'll be your host and producer this afternoon, Logan Landers, and joining me, as always, for our Vols weekly recap and, of course, talking about legendary Vols players later on in the program is the legendary Vol himself, Mr. Joey Clinkscale. Joey, welcome back to the program. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm wonderful. It's a great day to be a Vol.
Yes, sir. Yes, it is. And, of course, we're going to talk all about Tennessee and their hard-fought loss, unfortunately, to Oklahoma last week. And we know the Vols are off this week before finishing out the rest of their schedule. But before we get into that, and, of course, talk about our legend here on the show, if you enjoyed the episode, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. We go live each and every single week here on the channel, Facebook and YouTube, main two platforms there. But you can also check out our podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you enjoy listening to shows along those lines. We are over there, just audio versions of all of our shows here on the channel. So once again, thank you all for the continued support. Well, Joey, let's get into it. And as we know, we talked about last week, we knew it was going to be a tough task for Tennessee as they're going up against Oklahoma. Oklahoma at the time, ranked number 18 in the nation, beat Tennessee. Final score in that game, 33-27 in favor of the Sooners. We know Tennessee, they are hanging on for dear life in that top 25. They released the polls yesterday, and they are right there, smack dab at number 25. So they are still alive, but it feels like we're just slowly drifting farther and farther apart with just a handful of weeks left in the season. So got a little bit of a two-part question here to kick off the program. So following the loss, where do the Volunteers go from there? And do they really even have a path at this point to the playoffs, having their record being 6-3 with all three losses being in SEC play? What are your thoughts?
Well, essentially, the game versus Oklahoma was a playoff elimination game. And unfortunately, Tennessee won the game statistically. They won it in every place but the scoreboard. And that's the only place that counts is the scoreboard. Is there a path for Tennessee to get in the playoffs? I don't see it if there is. There would have to be some cataclysmic things to happen at this point for the Vols to get into the playoffs, and I just don't see a path where they can get in the playoff, especially since they have not had a big-time major win over an opponent this season. Georgia would have been that win. Alabama could have been that win. Oklahoma could have been that win, and they weren't able to win those games. So I don't see a path for them, if I'm on the committee, for them to get into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a tough sled, and we talked about last week previewing this matchup that it was going to be tough. That Oklahoma was a tremendous program. They've made a lot of stride in the last year or so to kind of turn that team around, and I mean they're looking solid right now. But for the Vols, like you said, they beat Oklahoma in pretty much all categories you can look at across the board. Look at the quarterback play between Mateer and Aguilar. And I mean, with Mateer, we've talked about for a while now that, he had that injury a couple of weeks ago in the season, and that he's still trying to find his footing at this point. But hey, a win is a win. And overall, like I say, he threw for just under 160 yards on the day, no touchdowns, one INT, and compare that to Aguilar, right? 29-45, looked great for nearly 400 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, but you can circle it in there in red, 2 interceptions. That's not going to get the job done.
He had the 2 interceptions along with the fumble strip, the strip sack that was returned for a touchdown. So, those 3 turnovers were really pivotal in the game. Defensively, we didn't play awful. Offensively, we kind of let the defense down this year, this week, in my opinion. Although, it's been in the big games this year, with the exception of the Georgia game, the offense has kind of let the defense down. The Alabama game, I didn't think the offense played really well. We didn't stick with the run consistently. This past week versus Oklahoma, I didn't think we consistently stuck with the run. We threw the ball. We threw the ball great at times, and at other times we made some mistakes that really cost us. I think we had some coaching snafus in the second half of the game, which were a little bit concerning in a game like this. But all in all, the Vols are 6-3. We have to find a way to finish out the season strong. It's an open date. So they have a chance to correct some things, get some things together, and be ready for homecoming, which is always a big game for every university versus New Mexico State.
Yeah, and I think, with Tennessee, just kind of looking back at that game with Oklahoma and kind of where it all changed. I mean, for the most part, it was a back and forth contest. It would be a way of, Tennessee scores, then Oklahoma answers right back. And it went that way pretty much all 4 quarters. And I think, when you look at the box score, look at kind of the plays at what unraveled in the win. I mean, the fourth quarter was just a flurry of big plays of offense. Each team combined, they scored 20 points piece 10 each. And I think, to me, what really ended up getting Tennessee out, just a little bit out of reach. They had that touchdown, 15-yard pass from Aguilar, went to Mike Matthews, 6-play drive there. They were quick with it, but immediately after, 2-play drive, Oklahoma gets back in the end zone, just under, I believe, 2 minutes left to spare in the ball game. And Tennessee, they did go back. They had a field goal with 47 seconds. But when you look, it's tough. When you look back at it, you say, okay, we go with the field goal, shoot for the onside, and see if we can maybe get something rolling there. But I have seen a lot of criticism with Tennessee's, and you just got to go all out, right? Forget the field goal. We're going all out. And so I have seen a little bit of criticism about that through, just various social channels and whatnot. With this one. But you mentioned, the defense we talked about leading up to this game has been kind of the crux for this team, kind of what's been failing them the most. But I honestly can't put a lot of the blame on this game on the defense for Tennessee. I think the Vols defense looked sharper than it has in quite some time. It's been a while since we came here on the program and praised them.
Well, Logan, I'll say this, looking at the game in totality, and you can never lose the game in the first half. You can only win the game in the second half. However, going into halftime, the discrepancy in yards and plays that Tennessee had over Oklahoma was amazing. And to only have 10 points going into halftime, and we were in the plus territory 4 or 5 more times than Oklahoma was. So we didn't get anything productive out of the offense that led to scoring in the first half. So I think that part of the game really hurt us, because now we're having to do things in the second half to play catch up. Okay. And part of the problem in this game was the defense played well enough. The offense put the defense in some bad situations. Okay. With the turnovers, again, the turnovers really hurt us. We did not play great complementary football. We haven't really done that a lot all year. To be quite honest with you, the offense have really been the producer for the team this year. But again, in this particular game, and the Alabama game too, to be quite frank with you, the offense kind of put the defense in bad situations, knowing that the defense have been shorthanded a lot of this year, especially in the secondary.
Yeah, and when you look at, like I said, you look up and down this box score after the game, and you'll see, man, Tennessee, they won this. They got, wins in this one. I would say for Oklahoma, it was they played a sloppy game in a way. They didn't play their best football on either side. They had 11 penalties on the day for just over 100 yards. So I mean, they if you thought they were going to try and extend the lead even more, they kept kind of biting themselves in the foot and taking a step back, and that kept Tennessee in it. But for the Vols fans and for the players and coaches, unfortunately, just still wasn't quite enough to get over that hump and to beat the Sooners in a matchup. But as we kind of turn our attention here into the bye week, their final bye week here, before they wrap up the season in a few weeks. But Joey, let's talk about the process here, because obviously you've been in the locker rooms, and I want to hear about what goes on during open weeks, during bye weeks, especially if you're coming off a tough loss here against a solid opponent in your conference. What's kind of the mindset going into the player's head of what do we have to do this week on our bye week to get things right and to hopefully end the season on a high note?
Well, I think you're going to go back and see what worked, what didn't work versus Oklahoma first and foremost. You're going to figure out why you couldn't run the ball effectively, and I think that's going to be a point of emphasis this week in practice, is being able to run the ball, whether it's getting better offensive line play, better communication, whatever it is that led us not to be able to run the ball effectively like we like to do. I think that's going to be a point of emphasis this week. But during the bye week, the process is, obviously you want guys to be able to get healthy. It's an opportunity to get off your legs. Some they'll take a few days off. Probably they probably will work early in the week and then take a longer weekend off. That's usually how that works. Now I don't know how this coaching staff would do it, but they will probably practice early in the week, do some things differently, and then get the kids off their legs more toward the weekend, give them an extra day or two that way. And then that way, next week, they're going back into their normal routine because, football we know is a routine-oriented sport. And anytime people are off schedule, then things kind of happen in a different way. So I think early in the week, they will practice like usual. They'll give them a longer weekend off, time to rest, relax, and hope no one gets in a lot of trouble on the weekend. But then, that way the Monday schedule and Sunday schedule, Monday schedule will be similar as it's been during the week. But this is opportunity to do more scouting. Again, you have New Mexico State coming in for homecoming. Hopefully you get past that team. Then you have Florida, which is another big game for you. And then you finish out the year with Vanderbilt, which obviously is a traditional game and will be a big game. But again, as I've said all year, you have to take a nameless, faceless opponent, which is New Mexico State, and you're going to treat New Mexico State. You're going to prepare for New Mexico State like you're preparing for Oklahoma or Alabama or Georgia. It doesn't matter the school. It matters the work you put in during the week, and make that work count on Saturday.
Yeah, and next week we're going to go into more detail and go section by section, player by player. But let's just kind of get a brief overview here since we do have an off week. Let's talk about New Mexico, the New Mexico State. Looking at the Aggies, currently 3-5 on the year. Just a little bit of a preview, Joey. What do you expect out of New Mexico State? They've lost a handful of games in a row, so 3 in a row to be exact for their last 5. So they're just hoping to get through the season healthy and look for brighter pastures. And they know Tennessee is they're a little ticked off right now, so right. They know it's probably going to be a rough Saturday. Not this week, of course, but next week. But just talk about the Aggies here and Tennessee's next one. Just
they're going to come in with nothing to lose. Yep. They're going to play the best they've played all year, if possible. Any injuries that they've had, that they're going to try to get those guys back. And I'm talking about the Aggies, and they are going to come in saying this team is the Tennessee team lost a big game. They're wounded. They have a big game after us, and we can be that team that they look past, looking forward to Florida. Yep. Okay, so we're going to come in here. We're going to play hard. We're going to reevaluate. We're going to reevaluate our team. We're going to play some young guys if we need to that we have on this roster at New Mexico State, and we're going to go in and guess what? We're going to do everything we can to take the crowd out of the game and still a victory on Tennessee's homecoming.
Yeah, and just a real quick look at their team stats here for New Mexico. Just as a team on defense, and I'm only going to say defense, we'll focus on offense a little bit more next week, but just something to keep in mind as we do kind of a full breakdown next week here on the show. Mm-hmm. New Mexico State on the year, 16 sacks as a team and 10 INTs, so they can get it done on defense. We'll talk more about the offense, Logan Fife, and how that crew is assembled next week here on the program. But Joey, as you know, we always talk about Tennessee. We talk about, their recent games, win, loss, draw, and of course we talk about the future. But we're going back to the past here. We're talking about, of course, our legend here on the show. And you see, trying to bring him down, it's hard to, though. We're talking Jamal Lewis, one of the best running backs. And really, not just Tennessee, but college football, NFL. Wherever this guy went, he was a force to be reckoned with. And let's talk about him here today. Jamal Lewis, what was the reasoning behind picking this late 90s Vols legend here on the screen?
Jamal Lewis was a fantastic player for the Vols. He's a guy that, he had a little different running style, a little choppy running style, but he was explosive. He was strong, especially in his lower body. He had pretty good hands, believe it or not, out of the backfield, catching the ball, especially on the screens and the swing passes. But he was a downhill runner. He didn't waste a lot of time in the backfield. He wasn't a real make-you-miss runner. He was a run through you, or in the words of Marshawn Lynch, he would run through your face mask whenever he could. But he also had the speed and acceleration to hit a home run as a runner. So he could he could make plays with the ball, and he started that at Tennessee early in his career and often, and he was certainly one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in Tennessee history.
Yeah, you know, with Jamal, he was born here in Atlanta, so always love to talk about guys here locally. At Tennessee, he was there from 97 through 99. And we know 97, he actually got a pretty decent amount of work in as a freshman.
Yes.
Which, you know, you look at now and you say, okay, you know, a freshman getting a lot of play. But, I mean, even back in, you know, the 90s, 2000s, it's still a little bit kind of odd or more rare, more so than it is now, to see guys, you know, early on freshman year contributing, especially to the way that Jamal did his first year. Over 1,300 yards, 7 TDs. As a freshman. So he looked great. And, you know, say, all right, we're going to put the rocket on your back. We're going to ride it here and keep moving on. But unfortunately, Joey, we know that Jamal did get hurt in his sophomore year in 98. Missed a lot of the season, had a knee injury, had a torn LCL is officially what it was, but came back in 99, looked strong. 800 plus yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground. And of course, he won SEC Freshman of the Year going back to that in 97. But what I like about Jamal Lewis in, you know, kind of his college career, and then we'll talk a little bit more about his NFL career here in a moment. But like I said, he had the hot shot freshman tag on him, right? Because he came in, did some great work for the Vols. 98, you're expecting more of the same, if not better. Unfortunate injury, we see it to a lot of greats, right? Getting hurt early on in their collegiate careers, but you know, like Jamal did, he came back and looked great in 99. And of course, we know he went on to get drafted number 5 overall. So. And this was by the Baltimore Ravens, of course, in 2000. So got drafted top 5 after coming off a major knee injury like that. Is a testament to, you know, what the organization thought with Baltimore. Scouts thought, obviously talked with him a ton. And I mean, kind of the rest is history with Jamal. We know what he did in the league, what he did in the NFL, what he did, of course, with Baltimore. That first year there in 2000, they won the whole thing. And the guy you see on the screen, yes, I know he's got the Tennessee orange on, but man, he looked good in the purple black, and he had over 100 yards rushing in the Super Bowl. And you can't ask for much more out of a rookie than getting it done on the biggest stage of them all and proving that, all right, we made the right call getting you number 5 overall.
Well, yeah, he was a pivotal part of everything they did offensively. As we know, the Ravens were a defensive heavy team. Dilfer was a quarterback, and they weren't a real go down the field explosive offense. So they really had to depend on their defense and running the ball. And Jamal Lewis gave them a pounder who could go downhill, who could make explosive plays, who could catch the ball out of the backfield, turn a short pass into a long gain. But he was the physical back that a physical football team needed. I mean, they had a big, strong offensive line anchored by a Hall of Famer at Jonathan Ogden at left tackle. And he was that bell cow in the backfield that could help them do all the short yardage work. Again, he fit the personality of that football team of being physical, downhill, tough-minded, aggressive. He checked all those boxes off for the Ravens.
Yeah, he did great work for Baltimore. And, of course, a lot of people say, you know, they kind of single out his rookie season with the team in 2000, of course, when they won it all. And like I said, everyone talks about that defense, and rightfully so. That 2000s Ravens defense is, you know, heralded among, you know, some of the greats in football history. But got to have an offense, too. And Jamal Lewis, you know, made an immediate impact like he did at Tennessee in Baltimore his first season. But I think a lot of people say that 2003 was his best year, just based off of numbers alone. 2,066 rushing yards, led the league, and also had a game where he rushed for 295, nearly got 300 yards in that 2003 season. Won Offensive Player of the Year, first team All-Pros. Well, and just that, you know, like I said, that 295 set records at that moment. But yeah, there's something about that 2003 season was special.
Well, it tells you what kind of back he was. There are maybe 5 guys in the history of the National Football League to ever have a 2,000-yard rushing season, and he's one of those guys. So that tells you alone what type player he was, and the explosive nature and the consistency that he had, especially during that season.
And just to put a bow on his career here, he played with Baltimore from 2000 to 2006, and then spent a little bit of time with their rivals there in Cleveland from 07 to 09. Averaged 4.2 yards per carry throughout his career, which is very impressive, of course. Finished with 10,607 rushing yards, as well as 58 rushing touchdowns. But I also feel like we got to highlight this real quick because he was kind of, in a way, kind of an early pioneer of what we see now with the modern backs. With you can run the ball, but you can also do a little bit of, in the passing game as well, in pass catching. Jamal Lewis, 221 receptions overall as a receiver coming out the backfield, 1,879 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, the Ravens and, also with Cleveland towards the end, they found ways to get this guy involved, kind of like we see here in Atlanta with Bijan Robinson. More of the same of you got to get him involved any way you can. Just basically put the ball in Jamal Lewis's hand, and he's going to get you out there a lot of yards, or he's going to get pay dirt and get you 6 points. So a guy who, defined the late 90s for Tennessee, defined the early 2000s for not just the Ravens, but for NFL running backs. And glad we were able to highlight him here today as our Vols Weekly legend. Joey, any final thoughts you have here, either about Tennessee, any last words you want to say about their loss to Oklahoma, or, of course, about the legend you see here on the screen, Mr. Jamal Lewis, number 31?
Well, I'll talk about Tennessee first. It's unfortunate that, we will not be in the college playoffs this year, but those things happen. You have to be able to win the close games. The good teams win the close games. And while we had the talent to be a really good team, we weren't able to get over the hump in the big games that we needed to. That being said, I've heard a lot of things on social media about the head coach, and which is quite frankly embarrassing and makes the Tennessee Vols fan base look bad. From the standpoint of, if you look at where the Tennessee football program was before Coach Heupel became the head coach and where it is now, from the penalties that we were under, the sanctions, the players that we did not have compared to where we are now. Unfortunately, you're not going to be, and we're in a culture now. We're in a council culture. You see 8 or 9 college coaches who have been fired during the season, which is rare. And part of that, in my opinion, is based upon where we are with the NIL and where we are with the collectives and that type thing, where college football is a moneymaker now. It's a big business. It's not like the days where there were the handshakes under the table and guys were getting paid. Life was simpler than it is now, at least for the coaches, because guess what? The expectation for the coaches, because they're going in and asking for money to get to build a budget to get players. So now they're next on the line. So things have changed. But getting back to Coach Heupel, it takes time to build a program the way you want to build it. It's not a quick fix. We've had success. We've been to the playoff. We've had success, and he'll continue to grow this program. So it's nonsense to think that okay, we're gonna fire this coach and get another coach. I mean, that's nonsense. People who say that really don't know a lot about football and how to build an organization. But Jamal Lewis, again, was a special player in the Vol legacy. His athletic ability, his toughness, his demeanor, his no-nonsense ability to play football, both in the collegiate and professional level, is really something that Vol Nation and the Ravens are proud of.
Yes, sir. Mr. Joey Klinkskill, thank you so much for putting on the show today. It's always a pleasure talking some Vols football, both current and past here. Of course, looking at Jamal Lewis and his tremendous accolades and career he had. And, of course, talking about the Vols and their unfortunate defeat at the hands of the Oklahoma Sooners last week. But hopefully they can end the year on a high note. 3 games left here in the season. Want to hear your thoughts, your predictions, your comments. Facebook, YouTube, main 2 platforms. Find us on there. But you can also go check out our podcast. Thanks to the Believe Podcast Network. So, for Mr. Joey Klinkskill, I've been your host and producer, Logan Landers. Thank you all for tuning in today. And until next week, we'll see you guys again on another episode here on 100 Yards.